death penalty exists in 34 states of the United States of America. Currently, only 16 states actually perform executions. Executions are carried out by lethal injection. Utah is the only state that until recently allowed the option of a firing squad. As a German, coming from a different historical background, and being a guest in the United States, I respectfully disagree with the practice of capital punishment. In order to film a death row inmate, you have to be invited by him in writing. Then the warden of the prison has to give his approval, and the rules are you only get 1 hour on camera. Hank Skinner has been on death row at the Polunsky unit in Livingston, Texas, for 17 years.
Right, lights, right.
I have to have Jeff. You do the honors.
Hey, glad to meet you, Jeff. I'm Hank.
In 1995, he was convicted of a triple homicide in Pampa, Texas, a crime which he vehemently denies having committed. I would like to make two things clear at the beginning. One, I'm not an advocate of capital punishment.
Okay.
Second,
neither am I.
I can imagine. And knowing that you are very much into your quest to prove your innocence, what we are doing here is not an instrument for proving your innocence.
Oh, I understand that. He already told me.
What is remarkable about your case is the Supreme Court of the United States has halted your execution, and the question now will be debated whether it is a civil right to have access to evidence, even though you are convicted now. Can you explain a little bit here?
When they arrested me, they illegally interrogated me, and I attempted to, I didn't confess, but I let them think that the evidence would come back to me so they would test it. Because I didn't care what they thought, I cared about the result. And I knew that I hadn't touched those murder weapons or that club. And I knew that if they tested it and it come back exculpatory, I could use it. Okay, so that's when my first quest for testing began, the morning I was arrested. From that point forward, they saddled me with a ringer lawyer. You probably know about that. Okay, he owed the IRS a substantial sum of money. He couldn't pay him. He had prosecuted me twice in the past. There was an obvious conflict of interest. I wanted him off my case. The judge absolutely...
However, may I interrupt?
Sure.
You, as being the defendant, could have interfered during your trial, telling the jury, telling the judge, stop here. There is some evidence that was never tested. Please do that. And it would have been part of your trial, but you did not interfere, even though you were a paralegal.
Okay, I will...
How did you accept an attorney like this who is ineffective?
I will address that. The judge told me point blank in court off the record that under no circumstances would he dismiss this attorney off my case because he was the only lawyer in the lawyer pool up there who had any capital experience at all. Okay, so I wrote this guy letters. Okay, you know, the whole thing with dealing with an attorney is making a record. All right, I had made my record. There was no reason for me to disrupt the proceedings. If I had done that, the judge would have had me removed from the courtroom. Not only that, I threatened to do that, and the lawyer threatened me and told me that if I did that, that he was going to put me on the stand and he was going to say in open court that he believed I was guilty, that he had advised me not to try to test this evidence, that he believed it would incriminate me. That would have blown my trial out of the water. That would have done me in for sure. If he had stood up in open court and said something like that, and he would have, because he had made a deal with the district attorney to convict me at any cost, even if it meant prejudicing the jury. And he was fully prepared to do that. So I was pretty much stuck between a rock and a hard place. So my plan was, I've made my record, I got this guy's ass, I can prove what he did, I can prove the conflict, and it's an automatic reversal, okay? So I'll go down here, I'll get me a lawyer, I'll get convicted, I'll go to death row, I'll find me a lawyer to handle my appeal, and I'll get the case reversed, and then I'll have a better lawyer, you know what I'm saying? I won't have to deal with this.
But it's not a real good strategy. If once you're convicted and you're on death row, that's a very hard place to be in.
You know, if I dropped you off in the middle of a tornado, you're not going to have some very good strategies either, you know what I mean? You can lay down on the ground and hope it passes over you, you know what I'm saying? You have to understand.
Let's not talk about the details of your trial. And so, fact is, you are here on death row, and you are as different than we outside on the other side of this glass. We do not know when we are going to die and how we are going to die.
Yes.
How familiar are you with the details in the rituals?
Very, very. I was within 20 minutes of execution. I had had my last visits. They took me over there to the walls. I was in the death house. I have a priest who supports me that's from the Vatican, and he came over here and delivered the last rites. He brought an apostolic blessing from the Pope. They anointed me with oil on my hands and my head, so I had extreme unction, the last rites, confirmation, communion. I went through the whole thing. The only thing was they didn't kill me. I ate my last meal.
What was your last meal, if I may ask?
I had 3 pieces of Popeyes style fried chicken, not from Popeyes, they fix it here, but it was spicy. I had 2 catfish fillets. I had a bowl each, a little small finger bowl of boiled eggs that was ground up, bacon bits for the salad, ranch dressing, tartar sauce, onions, and shredded cheese, cheddar cheese, and a bacon cheeseburger, and a large order of fries, and a big pitcher of chocolate milkshake.
And your holding cell is only 5-6 steps away from the gurney.
Yes. It's just a barred front cell. As I was sitting there eating and talking on the phone, I could look to my left and I could see the doorway, I could see the gurney, I could see the arm boards. I could see the microphone hanging down, and I could see the windows where the witnesses watched through there. So I was literally looking at my death while I was sitting there eating. I wasn't bothered by it at all.
You were not afraid?
No. I wasn't scared in the sense of dying and I'm not going to exist anymore, okay? I was scared of the blackness, the unknown. You know what I mean? You get closer and closer and closer and they're going to kill you, they're going to kill you, they're going to kill you. Because this ain't something you do every day. You don't go over there and lay down and die every day, you know?
How does time function? Does it stand still or does it race?
It does everything. It depends upon your mood.
Tell me about time.
Some days, well, really there's no sense of time in here, because although we can see the sunlight out the windows, you know, we know when it's night and day, there is activity here 24 hours a day, and the same activity. They have the SSIs come in to clean the pod. They're banging around, making all kind of noise. The same thing at nighttime.
Is there lots of noise?
Yes, and they feed around the clock. They feed lunch at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They feed breakfast at 3 a.m. They feed lunch at 10 a.m. So they feed all around the clock. So basically, it's very disorienting, because lots of times you'll wake up and you'll not know where the hell you're at or what meal it is, because usually you wake up at mealtime. That's when you'll be sleeping, right? And they'll come, hey, you going to eat? Bang on you, hey, you going to eat, you know? And so, you know, you have to, what is it? You ask them, what is it? Because what it is how you figure out what time it is. Time really has no meaning in here, you know? It's like my days have elongated from 28 to 34 hours. The prison windows down there in my cell, they don't wash them, okay? So as it rains, it knocks up dust and dirt on the window, and so it's pretty much coated. So the view that you get of the world is like over-coated, you know what I mean? It's like Leonardo da Vinci used to say, sapere videre. It's not what you see, but how you see it.
No, when you did this trip, you are being transported from Lunsky unit about 48, 50 miles to the death house.
Yes.
Dead Walls unit.
41 miles, yes.
Do the guards shout out dead men walking or
No.
things like that? No, they don't.
No.
That's movies.
Yes. No, they never do that. The people who handle you, when they come to pick you up at this unit, there's a major, a captain, a lieutenant, and a sergeant. 4 people in the van with you, okay? The driver, the front seat passenger, the jump seat driver that's in front of the dog cage. There's a dog cage inside the van, and that's what you're locked in. It's made out of this stuff right here.
Yeah.
And so it's like this. And there's one guy sitting in front of it. There's one guy sitting behind it, between the cage and the back doors. They're very stern and sincere about what they want you to do. They have a protocol. They do this once a week, so they're very good at it, you know. They're the team who handles this, okay? They're the death house team. That's all they do. And they get paid extra pay for it, okay? They're required to tell you that We need to tell you too that if anyone tries to stop, there's a caravan, there's a car in front, and there's 2 chase cars behind. They're all armed to the teeth, okay? And they tell you right off the bat, look, if anybody tries to stop this van and tries to get you out of here, we will kill you first. And they got guns. I mean, the guy in the jump seat, this one back here's got a shotgun. This one in the front's got a pistol and an AR-15, high-tech weaponry, you know. And they tell you we will shoot you first. So you need to know that.
So I couldn't free you if I tried.
No.
Even if I had a bazooka and a tank.
All you would do.
I couldn't. You would be dead before I could rescue you. The Walls unit in Huntsville, Texas, is where the death house is located. It is a journey of some 40 miles from the Polunsky unit, where they house all the male death row inmates. On the drive in, the condemned catch a glimpse of the world out there one last time.
The strangest thing for me was the people in the cars behind us. They were pointing at me like, you know, look, there they go, they got some prisoner in the van, you know. I wondered what they would say if they knew that guy's going to die. They're taking him to kill him. When we cross the lake, you know, there's a certain smell that's on the water. I always used to smell that when I would go catfishing at night. Well, that made me think about that when we were going across that bridge going to Huntsville. It's a very long bridge, you know, and it's got those expansion joints in it, so every 6 or 7 turns of the tires, pa-pump, 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 pa-pump. I can tell you there's 26 joints in that bridge. 26, ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk. When they get you over there, you've got from 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock, 5 hours. But it goes just like that. Time is flying so fast. At 5 o'clock, they take the phone away from you, okay? And from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock, you're eating your last meal. They start serving it to you at 4 o'clock. They just hand it, you have to pull your mattress back and hand it to you in a bowl. Okay, so I'm sitting there eating, I'm talking on the phone, and the chaplain tells me, you're gonna have to hang the phone up. I can't let you go any further, you know. He said, you done went 15 minutes, 13 minutes after, so. I said, well, I tell you what, I said, I wanna make one more call. He said, who do you wanna call? I said, I wanna call my lawyer. And he says, okay. He said, I'll let you call your lawyer. So he dialed the number, and the lawyer answers, Hank? And I said, yeah. He said, it's Doug Robinson, my lead counsel. And he says, Hank? I said, yeah. He said, man, you have the most uncanny sense of timing of any man I have ever met in my life. I said, why do you say that? He said, no sooner had I heard the click, the Supreme Court clerk just hung up the phone, than you came on the line. He said, I didn't even hear the phone ring. And he said, they granted you a stay. And when he said that, I couldn't hear anything. Tears started running down my eyes, and my legs give out, and I slid down the wall, and my ears were buzzing. I felt like somebody had lifted a 1,000-pound weight off of my chest. And I didn't realize that I felt like that until after this happened, you know, so it was scary, you know what I mean? And so I thought, well, why am I so upset now? I should have been upset that they was going to kill me. But I was handling that, you know what I'm saying? But this news, now I've got to stay. And so I still had some of my food left sitting up there on the bunk. And so I got to looking at that food, and suddenly I was ravenous. I was eating it before, but I was eating it kind of slow. But now I wanted to just devour it all. And so I got up and I grabbed the food and I started eating it. And I was so elated and so happy that the chaplain told me, he said, you look like God had touched you. He said, you were just beatific. He said, you were just beaming and smiling. Your eyes were all, you know. And then the lieutenant comes in there and tells me, he says, your lawyer told you that you got to stay? I said, yeah. He said, listen, I need to tell you something. And I said, what? He said, you see them 2 phones over there on that wall? I said, yes, sir. He said, that's the governor's line and the attorney general's line. Unless one of those phones ring and tell us to stand down, this execution's going forward at 6 o'clock. Because we do not accept stays from defense counsel.
And how long did it take until the phone rang?
That was the longest 23 minutes of my life. It was 5:13. The phone did not ring until 20 minutes till 6 o'clock that they got the official order to stand down. And the phone rung, the lieutenant went over there and picked it up real smartly and got on the phone and said, hello. And he said, and you're sure? And they said, yeah. He said, and we're to stand down. And they said, that's right. There's no execution tonight. He said, we thank you very much. Hung the phone up. He said, Skinner, you got to stay. You know what was the saddest part of after I got to stay? Okay, so I'm eating the last meal, and they're telling me, here, give me them plates back. I said, no, I'm going to finish this. I said, you know, they fixed it for me. I'm going to finish it. And so he said, but we're going to take you back to the Pulaski unit. And that's when it dawned on me, you know what I'm saying? The only thing that I've won right now is they're going to take me back over there to that hellhole I just came from.
Where we are sitting right now.
Yes. And see, it looks pretty nice out here, you know what I mean? It's a whole different story back there. You don't see the
death row we cannot see, yes. We are not allowed.
Yes. And I want to say this, they do not treat us mean, or they do not mistreat us. That's got nothing to do with what it is. What it is all these guys, the oppression, all these guys sentenced to death, all these guys that are suffering this with me, okay? And so that's what makes it so bad. It is a place of human bondage and human suffrage. And, you know, it's like in the nighttime, guys, you hear them crying, you hear them call because they're suffering. You know, I'm not sure how to explain it. It's just a bad place. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's a bad place. They kill somebody here about once a week. Well, anyway, so I told him, I said, man, my heart's beating pretty hard. I had high blood pressure. I have to take medicine for it. So I haven't had my medication this evening. And he said, why didn't you take it? I said, well, hell, they were going to kill me. What's the point of taking some medicine? What's that going to do, you know? He's like, yeah, I see your point. He said, well, I'll get the nurse down here to see you. And he said, well, give me them plates back. I said, no, I'm going to finish eating this meal. You just go get the nurse. And so the chaplain tells me, he said, you know, Skinner, he said, you really blow my mind. I said, why? He said, most of the guys, when they had 2 weeks out and they want to get the meal, he said, they got big eyes. They want everything. And he said, but when it gets down to the nitty gritty, like today, you almost died, he said, they can't eat nothing. He said, they sit here and talk on the phone and they cry with their family. And he said, then it's time to go. And he said, the meal's virtually untouched. And he said, the prisoners in the ODR, which is the officer's dining room, are the ones who prepare these meals. And he said, they do the best they can for 2 reasons. One reason is they know it'll be the last thing you ever eat on this earth. And so they want it to be as good as they can make it for you. And he said the second thing is they know you're going to be so damn nervous you can't eat it anyway, and when it comes back to them, they're going to get it, and they're going to eat it, right? And he said, so they're going to be sorely disappointed today. so we were laughing about that.
Hank Skinner's troubles began here in the North Texas town of Pampa, 50 miles east of Amarillo, population 18,000. In 1993, Skinner was living here with Twyla Busby and her 2 mentally impaired sons. We wanted to speak with a reporter who covered the case back then. David Bowser, we have looked into the case of Hank Skinner. How did you come across the case yourself?
Well, I came to work that New Year's morning and was met at the door by our police reporter. Who,
still hungover?
Well, no, she doesn't drink, and I didn't get the chance. But I was met at the door by her, and she said, we have a triple. And I said, what? And she said, we have a triple homicide. So I went from a New Year's morning that I had no main story for the front page to having a main story. So we spent the next week covering the murder case.
Triple meant good news for you.
It meant good news in the perverse world of journalism, yes.
And what had happened?
Supposedly, Twyla Busby, Hank Skinner's girlfriend, had gone to a party. Skinner had passed out on the couch, combination of cold medicine and drugs, and he had a cold at the time. And when she got back, apparently they had a fight, and she died. Her 2 mentally impaired sons were both stabbed.
Hank Skinner maintains that he was so drunk and so spaced out and found after he was arrested with such a high level of alcohol in his blood that it was impossible for him to even walk, stand up, or do anything.
That was the testimony of the doctor that examined him, and yet he still made his way from the house where he was to his girlfriend's house to have his hand fixed. I don't know.
Well, I think we should have a look at the crime scene, if you do not mind.
Not at all.
We are expecting a snowstorm.
Like to do it before the snow.
This is downtown Pampa before the blizzard. On this very afternoon, Hank Skinner's son found himself in the middle of a storm of his own.
His son still lives here. His son and his former wife still live in Pampa. And his son is on trial presently. In fact, the jury's out right now. He is accused of kidnapping his girlfriend, and the son could face life in prison. But the girl he's accused of kidnapping, they're now engaged. They're planning on getting married, so he's bought the ring.
What is going on with his family?
I don't know. I don't believe in criminal energy, so
You believe in what then?
I believe in what's going to happen next.
This is the neighborhood in Pampa as forlorn as downtown, where the murders took place.
This is where Twyla Busby and Hank Skinner lived with Twyla's two sons. The night of the murder, she was beaten to death in the front room. Both sons were stabbed, one of them in his bunk bed in the back bedroom where they found him, and the other one came apparently out the front door, down the sidewalk, all the way down the street, down the sidewalk, and to the house on the corner, which is no longer there. Knocked at the door and then collapsed in the front porch.
You're speaking about a sidewalk, but there's no sidewalk.
There was.
And Hank Skinner himself, was there blood evidence on him as far as you remember?
My understanding was that there was blood on his clothing, and he had cut his hand and she was sewing it up.
She is who?
Andrea, his former girlfriend.
So he had a girlfriend and a former girlfriend nearby.
Yeah, that's where he was arrested. The sheriff and the district attorney investigator found him over there, standing in a closet in a back bedroom of the house trailer. We're going over to the house where the boy was found. He came down here, there were drops of blood, and he apparently stayed on the sidewalk. Came down to the corner, over, would have come up this way, up on the porch. There was a house here. The gentleman that lived here found the boy collapsed on the porch, called police. From there, they tried to follow the blood back, drops of blood back to that house, and that's where they found Twyla Busby. And initially, they couldn't identify her.
Why?
She was so badly beaten. She was bludgeoned to death. The two boys were stabbed.
Here in Texas, particularly in this area, I think most of the population is fundamental Christian. Let's say news hits the town that Skinner has been executed. What's going to happen then?
I don't think there'll be any public outcry. This is a very conservative community, so there's probably more interest outside of Pampa now than there is in. So.
But they would welcome it. They would probably celebrate and feel good about it.
They would feel justice had been done.
What is your opinion about justice in a case like Skinner?
I have no problem with the death penalty. I question how it's interpreted many times, and whether justice has been done, but I have no problem with the death penalty. I have no doubt that Hank Skinner is guilty of what he did. If evidence comes back that exonerates him, that's even a better story, so we'll see.
After a hiatus of 5 months, we were allowed to visit Hank Skinner again on death row at the Polonsky unit. In the interim, the Supreme Court of the United States had ruled in his favor. For the first time, a convicted person could sue the state to gain access to evidence not brought forth in their trial. Skinner's argument is that in his case, the evidence would point to someone else. Mr. Skinner, last time we saw you, you looked different.
Oh, yes.
What
I've
happened?
gotten a little bushier. Well, I'm level 2. They moved me down to a different wing, and so I don't have to shave. I can look like I want to look like, and so that's what I'd rather look like me than look like what they want me to look like. You know what I'm saying? So I have to give up all my privileges to do that. You know, in order to express my identity. But I'd rather be me, myself, than what they want me to look like. So that's where I'm at now. I'm on the punitive wing. You know, so. Yeah. I can't buy any commissary, I can't possess any property, but there's a freedom in that too, because down there they can't tell me nothing. They can't tell me what to do. If they tell me what to do, I just blow them off and not listen to them. Even though I'm locked up in a prison, it's a very, like a freedom experience, you know what I'm saying? I'm released from the rules. I don't have to pay any attention to nothing nobody says. I can stay in my cell all day and do whatever I want. The only problem is I've only got what I've got to work with, which ain't much. My legal material, which I take great pride in, and books that my wife sends me to read, the book of yours that I just finished reading. Yeah.
Now, a big change happened. There was this case at the Supreme Court of the United States.
Yes.
Tell us about it, because it's big.
Yes, it is. It is big. Well, when I lost my appeal in the Fifth Circuit, my lawyers came to me and told me, they said, listen, you know, they said, this is serious. We should have won this case here. And you're now out of criminal appeals, so we don't know what to do. Well, you know, do you have any ideas? I did have an idea, and I told them what I wanted to do, and at first they said, no, that's not going to work. The Supreme Court has never allowed a prisoner to sue the district attorney. They're sovereignly immune. There's nothing you can do. You can forget that. I said, but wait a minute. And I went back to this Osborne decision, which was the case preceding mine in the DNA, and I told them, look at this and look at this. I think, you know, because of what this says, we can do this and make it fly. I think it'll work. The chances of them hearing it were practically zero. They take less than 1/10% of the cases presented to them every year. So finally they set their oral arguments for October the 13th, and that's a very significant date for me, because Friday, October the 13th is the day that Prince Philip the Fair gave up the Templars and got them all slaughtered by some of my ancestors. I took that as a good sign, as an omen. I believe in portents. I'm a hillbilly and I'm superstitious. Anyway, are you familiar with the Epic of Gilgamesh?
I am, yes.
Are you?
Yes.
You know what God told Gilgamesh?
Hank Skinner has a tendency to lose himself in obscure historical events, like the persecution of the sect of the Templars in medieval France, or in the Gilgamesh epos, the earliest human literature of the ancient Sumerians.
God told Gilgamesh, live thy life well, for it is appointed to man once to die.
For him, everything holds a secret connection. His own persecution, events, dates.
This guy who was the Texas Solicitor General, he got killed in a plane crash 8 months to the day that they were going to kill me. And in my case, it's a woman and 2 men who are dead. And in his plane crash, it's a woman and 2 men who died. This man who tried to get me killed himself is dead. You understand what I'm saying? That's a significant portent to me, you know. So
yeah, can you translate the ruling very briefly for a taxi driver?
Okay, the ruling says that for the first time in the history of the United States, you can sue a district attorney to force her to turn over DNA evidence in a capital case if she withheld it and refuses to let it post-trial, after trial.
Congratulations, because it's way beyond your case. It's a landmark.
Now any person who has DNA, or not just DNA evidence, but any forensic evidence which could prove them innocent, if the state is withholding it and refuses to turn it over, you can sue them and force them to do so. But you know, the thing about it is that a lawsuit like that should be so unnecessary, because any district attorney has an ethical obligation to release the innocent. And if he's holding somebody that he knows could be innocent, he has an ethical obligation to test the evidence and see if they're innocent. And if they are, he should let them go.
And in your case, it is within the discretion of the district attorney just to say, I'm handing it over.
Yes.
Without lawsuit, without anything, just...
Yes. She is in sole custody of the evidence. She is a custodian of the evidence, and she can turn it over to my lawyers. She doesn't have to have a court order or the permission of the judge or anything else. She can just say, here, go test it and let's find out. And I don't understand why she wouldn't want to do that.
The district attorney's essential argument is that she is satisfied with the overwhelming amount of evidence against Skinner found at the crime scene. According to her, he's just overextending the legal process in order to further delay his execution.
Twyla and her sons were killed in the house using implements that came from our house. The 2 knives that they say were the murder weapons laid on our kitchen counter, they were the sandwich making knives. I use those knives on a daily basis, fixing sandwiches for myself and for the kids. We had a bunch of little ragamuffin kids that lived in the neighborhood. I fed them too, crack mama kids, so I took care of them too.
Another problem Skinner had with his defense was the cut that the police found on his hand when they arrested him. Skinner explains it this way.
My hand had a suppurating wound. I just had the drainage tube removed where it was surgically worked on, and it was still leaking, so,
Do you have a scar there?
Oh, yes, a very bad one. It goes from here all the way up to here, and from here all the way out to there. I nearly filleted the thumb plumb off my hand. It was a shop accident. You can see that there's mass missing out of my hand. It's all sunk in. Look at this one. You see the difference, right? So I've got less than 48% use left in this hand. My thumb will go only to there. This thumb goes all the way over here.
If ever the evidence in question is tested, the results might be inconclusive, incriminate him further, or, as Skinner hopes, point to someone else.
This guy who killed Twyla, I firmly believe it was her uncle. I believe he snatched those knives off the counter and used them to kill the boys. That makes perfect sense. But he touched them one time. I touched them 650,000 times. I used them every day. So did other people in the house. So let's just play the odds like we're in Vegas, What are the odds of his DNA being on it versus my DNA? So the chances are, if we test this stuff, I could be executed for fixing brisket sandwiches. That's what it amounts to. That sounds insane, but you have to laugh or cry, So anyway, I think what holds the greatest promise is the jacket that was found beside her body, because it's absolutely not my jacket. It's a man's extra large 44-46, which was the size that he wore. It has sweat stains in the armpits. The cuffs and the forearms of the sleeves have medium velocity impact blood spatter all over them. And the criminalist is the best in the country, Max Courtney, who examined this evidence. He says that jacket was worn by the assailant. That's how the blood is all over the forearms and the sleeves, because when he was killing her with the club, it's splattering back all over him. So I think that it was definitely him. But we're going to have conclusive evidence. It can't just be something here or there, something ephemeral. It's got to be something that's dead on. But the chances of it being me in an innocent way are so great, because I use those knives every day. And so, the state is not going to be willing to see that. If the DNA on the handle of that knife comes back to me, they're going to say, oh, that's it, that proves that he done it. And the public will be more than ready to kill me, because they want to kill me anyway, you know what I'm saying?
This is Hank Skinner 17 years ago at the time of his trial. His appearance has changed wildly over the years, but the threat over him has remained a constant. Even after the Supreme Court's ruling in his favor, yet another date for his execution was set and subsequently withdrawn. Through it all, the only refuge for Skinner has been his dreams.
I look at those newspaper ads and I look at each thing in there that I remember stuff. Avocados. I would kill somebody for, I know I wouldn't, but I'm joking. But I mean, I would do anything. I would kill somebody for an avocado right now. You know what I'm saying? Just to be able to peel that thing, man, and cut it into slices and put some salt and pepper on it and eat it. And if I had a bottle of tequila to go with it, woohoo, man, I'm telling you, that is the best taste in the world, man. Avocados, lime, and tequila, man. I dream about that all the time. And right when I get the taste, when I dream about it, when I'm getting the taste of it in my mouth, I wake up and I'm back in this damn cell with this concrete walls and this concrete bunk. It's hard to explain, to convey this to where people out there could understand it. They go to the grocery store every day.
I live in a little concrete box for the last 17 years, and the only thing I get to eat is what they decide to give me, and it comes on a tray, and it's already prepared, and there's nothing extra, you know what I'm saying? It's the leanest, most unappetizing food that you could possibly imagine. The movie where Werner Herzog ate his shoe, imagine that every day. It's about the same thing. It tastes like cardboard, man, you know. Sometimes they get a little something that's got some flavor, but not very often. And so just to be in a grocery store, like one of those mega grocery stores where they got all this stuff, man, and I could be in there and I could just pick anything I wanted. If I just had $1,000 in my hand, I'd get me some sash cord and tie 2 or 3 grocery carts together end to end like a train and just fill them up and go to the, I don't need the express lane, I can take my time, I'm free now, you know what I'm saying? And go to the cash register and just watch them ring that stuff up and ring that stuff up. And I just told my daughter in a letter that I wrote her, I think about a washing machine all the time because I have to wash all my clothes by hand. You see how white these are? I guarantee you they don't come out of the laundry like that. I had a dream the other night that I had bought me a brand new washing machine, and I had me a frozen margarita in one hand and a left-hand roll in the other hand, and I had the lid up on the washing machine, and I was putting the clothes in it and pouring the detergent in it, and it started washing, and I started crying because I was just so damn grateful to watch that thing turn, and I don't have to do it no more by hand, you know. Look, this is what it does to your hands when you wash clothes here by hand because the sink is round, you know, and so you have to, you know, you have to knead the clothes and turn them, and so your knuckles are constantly in the bottom of the sink. Now both of my fingers are crooked because of this, you know. For years, 17 years of doing this, that's what it's done to my hands. You know what I mean? I dared myself to start thinking again about the future. I had quit thinking about the future altogether and just live moment to moment, you know, because I don't know if I'm going to have any future because they might kill me.
Let's speak about the future. Close your eyes and think about the day you're going to be released from here. What are you going to do then? What's the first thing?
I have dreamed it so many times, it's got to come true. I think that all the time. That's the only thing that keeps me from going insane in here. You know, my firstborn daughter, I have 3 children. I got 2 daughters and a son, and they're all 3 have different mamas. The son is the youngest. I got a middle daughter who's 28, and my oldest daughter, she just turned 30. Her birthday is 1 month to the day after mine, okay? She was my firstborn, and when I brought her home from the hospital, I was 19 years old, and I was just infatuated with this child. Look what I did. I made this. Can you believe this? I did this myself, you know what I'm saying? And had a lot of fun doing it, too. And so, but when I brought her home from the hospital, she was a daddy's girl from the moment she came out of her mama's womb. She was not sleeping in the baby bed. The only place she wanted to sleep was on daddy's chest. She cut her teeth on my collarbone. She, you know, when she was little, up until she was 6 or 8 months old, she wouldn't sleep anywhere but on my chest, like a little frog with her legs pulled up to her belly, you know, and her arms wrapped around my neck, and she'd have her little mouth right there on the side of my neck, and every few minutes she'd wake up and start sucking on my neck, you know. And so every morning she would wake me up. She would wake up, and when I would wake up, here's this baby right in my face, and when she learned to raise herself up, she's about 6 months old, you know, she'd always be checking out my lips. She loved my lips. She would always kiss me on the bottom lip and then pat me on the cheek like, there you go, that'll hold you. You know what I'm saying? When they almost killed me, she came back into my life. 25 years she's been absent, and so we've had some marvelous visits together. And her name is Natalie Jo, and I call her Queen Natalie Jo. And there's just no way I can explain to you the bond that child and I have. And it's this glass, you know, when she comes to see me, it's so sweet because she's right there, but I can't touch her. It's my own daughter, my own blood, and I can't even hug her. I can't kiss her goodbye. I want to put my face in her hair and smell her hair. I want to pull her to me and hold her. I want to feel the warmth of her body against me. You know what I mean? That's the first thing. The second thing is I want to do the same thing to my wife and lots more. I want to be with my wife. You know, we have been together for 14 years, and I have not seen her in 28 months. They took her off my visit list for bogus reasons, and so they won't let her come see me anymore. You know, I think about hugging them both at the same time, just a 3-way, you know what I mean? Because my wife's pretty small, and I think I can handle both of them, just pick them up off the ground and squeeze them together. But at the same time, being so sad from losing everything earthly and dying, you know, I believe in the hereafter. It's like going on a trip. You're going to see something for the first time. And then there's the unknown. you know, and you just vacillate between these three emotions. It just keeps getting, you know, it's like, well, what's going to happen next when I get on the other side? You know, I'll be free of this flesh. I'll be out of this flesh. I can go however I want and do whatever I want to do. But will I still be, you know, am I just going to be spread out some maybe nothing conscience, or what is it going to be? You know, and so you think about that. And then you think about the unknown for them. You know, it's permanent. Whatever happens, you're stuck with it. You can't come back. So that's the scary part. When I was a kid, I saw a Twilight Zone episode that had Dennis Weaver. He used to be McCloud. When the scene comes on, he's in a jail cell and the jailer is shaking his foot. He says, "Blackie, Blackie, wake up, wake up. Your mouthpiece is here." And so the guy wakes up and he looks around and he realizes he's on death row. The lawyer comes in and he sits down and he says, "Hey, I did everything I could, but the court's not trying to hear it, and you better prepare yourself because they're going to kill you," okay? And then here comes his girlfriend. She's blonde-headed, and she comes in and sits down, and she's crying, and she's wringing her handkerchief, you know what I'm saying? They take him in there, and they put him, it's a gas chamber, and they put him in the gas chamber, and just as they drop the pellets, the telephone rings, and it was the governor with the stay, and he screams, "Ah!" They killed him, and he wakes up, and he's in another jail cell. And the jailer says, "Whitey, wake up." It was Blackie before. "Whitey, wake up. Your lawyer's here." And another lawyer comes in, and he starts talking to this guy, and he's rubbing his head, and he goes, "Man, I was having a hell of a bad dream. I dreamed that they killed me." Lawyer tells him, "Hey, man, I did everything I could do," you know what I'm saying, "but it didn't do any good, and this is going through. You better prepare yourself." The girlfriend comes in. This time it's a redhead. She's got big breasts, and she sits down and starts talking to him. And you can see the look in his eyes. He don't even know this woman. You know what I'm saying? And she's telling him, "Oh, you know, I've had your kids and blah blah blah, and then Frankie Jr. and this and that and another thing." And he's sitting there looking at her like, "Who in the hell are you?" You know. And so they take him in there, and it's the hangman's noose. They're on the hangman's scaffold, and they put the hangman noose around his neck, and they hit the lever right as the phone's ringing. "It's the governor with a stake." It's too late. He starts screaming again. He wakes up in another jail cell. This goes on over and over again until finally he just wakes up screaming. And he don't quit screaming. And so when they put me on Texas death row, that I really identified with that, how he feels, because in a way that is what has happened to me, because all the guys in here that I met, that I came here with, when I first came here, I was on the 13th page of the list of prisoners that was going to be put to death. And now they've killed so many of them, 375 people, Werner, since I've been here 17 years, and now I'm on page 2. And there's only this many people in front of me, and with everyone they kill, they're one more closer to hang. The two guys who died just before me, Michael Segala and Joshua Maxwell. Joshua Maxwell was my best friend here, and we've been in cells side by side for 3.5 years together, okay? And so he asked me what was going to happen when we lost our appeals, and I said, "We're going to wind up on death watch together, and they're going to kill our ass. That's what's going to happen." And so 2 months later, there we were in a cell beside each other on death watch. And he said, "Man, dog, I tell you," he said, "I don't like your predictions." Well, so I had my original date was February the 24th. I was going to die before either one of them, and so I thought, well, at least I don't have to watch them die. I got that one consolation, you know what I'm saying? So 7 days out from this date, they changed my date to March the 24th, okay? Segala's date was 22 days before mine, which in the occult is significant, as I'm sure you're aware, okay? So they killed him. His name was Michael. That's the name of the archangel, you know? One of God's 3 archangels, Gabriel, Uriel, and Michael, right? So they killed him, okay? And 13 days before my date, they killed Joshua Maxwell. Joshua in Hebrew, as you may know, is Yeshua, Jesus, okay? And they killed him 13 days before my date, okay? Then they took me over there and they didn't kill me, but they almost did. And while I was sitting there on the bunk, you know, reviewing my life and seeing all these things that had happened, he was there beside me. And first I could just feel him, and then I could see a little bit of him. And he told me, he put his hand on my shoulder, and he told me, he said, "Dog, this ain't your time to go." And he said, "I guarantee you it's going to be all right." And when he said that, when he disappeared, I actually heard a little crisp noise like psst. And I thought, man, I'm losing my mind. You know, now I'm cracking. It's because like I'm fixing to go in here and be strapped on this gurney, and I'm finally losing my mind. And he's still there. He said, "No, you ain't." So I got to stay, and my birthday was the following Sunday, and guess what that was? Easter Sunday, April the 4th this year. the resurrection, you know. So I really truly feel like, so I got to stay, I was resurrected.
Did you see the tie-down team? What kind of guys are they?
They're all pretty good size. The main one, the major, is a pretty good size old boy. He looks like he played football in high school. They're all pretty good size. They're not, you know what I was thinking? I was thinking, you know, if you were a serial killer and you didn't want to get arrested by the police, man, this would be the job to have. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, I'm looking at them, and that's what's going through my mind. And apparently they see I'm really giving them the once-over, because when they're looking at me, they're kind of mean mugging me because of the way I'm just staring at them, you know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying anything. And so they probably think, yeah, this one here, look at him. He looks like a damn killer. We're probably going to have to fight him. But that's not what's going through my mind. You know what I'm saying? I was thinking, damn, here's a whole pack of serial killers and they get away with it. The insanity of it, you know what I'm saying? It's like you feel like you're in a Twilight Zone moment, man, because it's just, it's like reality. They just grabbed it and twisted it inside out, and here you go. Now, it just doesn't even, you can't, I couldn't imagine working on a team like that where I was going to go strap somebody down and kill them, you know?
When you did this trip and you knew you were going to Wall's unit, to the death house, could you see the landscape out there?
When we got to the end of the driveway, I was so happy to be leaving this place. I hate this place. I despise this place.
It was almost like seeing something alien. I'm saying if someone took you to, like, say, Israel and set you down in the middle of the Holy Land, and it's the very first time you'd ever saw it, you know, you'd be in shock, in awe, you know what I mean? So when you see stuff like that and you know that you're going to die, you know, the whole thing, I was, at certain points over there, I was just laughing insanely to myself, because it's like, this can't be real. There's no way in hell this is really happening. I'm having a bad dream, and I'm going to wake up in a minute and somebody's going to tell me, you know, what's wrong with you, man? You're talking in your sleep again, you know?
Inspired by Hank Skinner, we took this trip for ourselves. The landscape bleak, forlorn, and yet everything out there all of a sudden looked magnificent, as if entering the Holy Land. Hank Skinner's Holy Land. The Happy Worm bait shop in the Holy Land. We even saw something which looked like a few stray apostles on the road to death.